What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Us vs. Them channel. I'm your host, Vince, and we're going to break down the second episode of Dana White's Contender series. I'm always really excited to break these down because there's always opportunities to make money on these. Some guys are big favorites, some guys are big dogs, and, like we saw last week, underdogs win. So I'm really excited. Let's just get into this. The first fight we're going to break down is Tommy Cuezi versus Ramiro Jimenez. Tommy is sitting at a plus 280 underdog, and Jimenez is sitting at a minus 355 favorite. Both these guys are strikers by nature. They like to knock people out, preferably, but they both have decent jiu-jitsu as well. Cuezi, or however you say his name, he likes to throw with bad intentions. A lot of the fights that I watch, he likes to sit down on his punches and really connect and do punches that really will score on the judges' scorecards if it goes to the decision. He's got a really fan-friendly approach, so I think he's going to be a good fit tomorrow on the Contender series for sure. One thing to note about Cuezi is sometimes when he's brawling, his chin is up in the air, and he's susceptible to getting touched. He typically keeps a high guard normally, but when he starts brawling, those hands just drop and his chin's kind of up. So like I said, he could be touched and potentially knocked out. Another thing that I noticed about Cuezi is he does a lot of like hip tosses or head and arms, not a bunch, but he does some of them. He kind of depends on those. I like to see guys more do the body lock and kind of drag people down as opposed to doing a step over, just because it's a lower risk and honestly it's a higher, percentage chance of getting the finish. I coach youth wrestling, and I always tell my little kids that we don't do head and arms. So I definitely don't like to see it in a pro MMA bout, especially when it comes to men. I think women can kind of get away with it a little bit with their frames and shit. But I don't like to see that, particularly in a pro MMA fight. And one thing to note about Jimenez is his toughness. His last fight, he fought 3 times in one night. Can you fucking believe that? 3 times in one night. In 2023. That shit was, I thought, lost in the 90s. I thought we got away from the one night, 8-man, 16-man tournament. But he fought 3 times in one night and won the tournament. Got $100,000 for the win, and that's awesome for him. But he just showed his durability and his toughness. His first fight went to decision. It was only a 2-round scheduled fight, but it still went to decision. He got dropped a couple times in the first round, but he was able to battle back, get the win on that one, then earned a first-round KO the next fight, and then a first-round submission the fight after that. He came in that last fight lumped up, and his eyes was beaten up, but he still was able to get the job done in the first round. So he's obviously a tough dude. Jimenez has really good boxing. I mean, he's got pretty solid boxing at least. He keeps a high guard, and he picks his shots really well. He also mixes in head kicks from time to time, which is nice, because I don't like to see a boxer just be throwing traditional boxing. I like to see him throwing some kicks every once in a while. But like I said, he keeps a high guard, and he picks his shots relatively well, so he keeps himself pretty safe. Jimenez's chin, I'm not going to be honest with you, I'm a little worried about it. The fight that I was talking to you about when he went to decision, he lost the first round because he got dropped twice to a guy named Pablo Burgos. Pablo Burgos has 1 knockout on his pro MMA record. So it's not like he's over there knocking people's heads off, So if a guy like that touches you and drops you, it makes me a little concerned fighting a guy like, when you're going to fight a guy like Tommy Cuezi, or however you say his name. When you look at their past competitive bouts, and their pro MMA records, you'll notice that on paper, Jimenez has probably the better record. He's fought in better competition. But he's going to go fight probably the highest level striker that he's ever fought. His combined record for his opponents have way more wins than Cuezi. But Cuezi did get a lot of work at the amateur scene. He lost his last 4 fights on the amateur scene to pretty tough dudes. And then he went the traditional boxing route where he did a lot of his hard competition late in his amateur career, and then he kind of eased it into his pro MMA career. And I think that's what he's doing. Both these guys are young. But Cuezi's been doing this for a while. But like I was saying, with Jimenez's boxing, or just striking in general, he hasn't fought a striker like this. His opponents have 59 wins, and only 16 of those wins come from knockout. I don't know exactly the stats on how often people get knocked out versus submissions or decisions, but he's definitely not fighting opponents that are headhunters. I've been going back and forth on this bout and determining who wins. I've been leaning towards Jimenez, just from he showed that he was a tough dude in that one fight, or one tournament in a whole night. He showed he's tough. but he tends to start really slow, and Coezi does not do that. He comes out really hard and aggressive, so it might throw Jimenez's timing off. I can see him drop in the first round potentially, but after that, I think Jimenez should be able to take over and get the win. But to be honest with you, that line is way too crazy for me to touch. I think this fight's going to be way closer than the line suggests. So stay tuned to the end of the video so I can give you my prediction as far as what we're going to do with the parlays. Second fight we're going to get into is Josh Hockett versus Guilherme Urelli. I'll put the name on the fucking screen. But Hockett's sitting at a minus 440 favorite, and Guilherme, we'll call him by his first name, is at a plus 340 underdog. There's been a lot of big favorites on this card that I don't fully agree with, and this is not one of those favorites. I think this favorite is going to dominate this fight. Hockett is a former All-American in wrestling over at Fresno State. He also played football over there, where I think he was an All-American. He got drafted by the San Francisco 49ers, so he played a little bit of pro ball too. And then when that didn't pan out, he transitioned to pro MMA and has been dominating dudes. He looks really, really good. For the heavyweight division especially, it's really exciting to see a prospect like Hockett come through. Another thing that I like about Hockett is he keeps a relatively smaller frame. He weighed in his last fight at 238 pounds, which is about, 30-ish pounds under the heavyweight limit. So he's obviously, A, not cutting weight, and B, he's a little bit smaller and agile. So he's able to use his athleticism that'll definitely have an advantage over in this fight and in a lot of upcoming fights, I believe. I've always been a big fan of smaller heavyweights when it comes to college wrestling or even high school wrestling. So this is one of those where I feel like it translates over a little bit. We haven't seen a lot of guys be able to do it, or I don't think a lot of guys have really tried it. A lot of our heavyweights are big dudes, weighing in at that 265, 266 pound limit. I think Hockett is going to be the first of a new generation of heavyweights. Another thing I noticed about Hockett is he does carry some power in his hands too. In his fight against Ezekiel Latu, who's not like the greatest fighter, but in that fight he popped him with a jab that sat Latu down, which I think that's awesome to see. He's not just a traditional wrestler. He's not just going to come and Hamzat Chimaev you and be a wet blanket. But he's actually got some power in his hands and he's looking to do damage on top. Urelli, or however you say his name, he comes from a Muay Thai background. You can tell that relatively early on in fights. He invests a lot in leg kicks, which for a heavyweight is a really good thing. You don't see a lot of heavyweights investing in leg kicks in fights. But the one thing I did notice is that he got gassed out pretty early on in one of his fights. We're halfway through the first round, and he looked like he was pretty gassed. That's going to be a big concern if he starts getting into wrestling scrambles with Hockett, because those wrestling scrambles wear on you really quick. For my official prediction, I'm going with Hockett. That's probably pretty obvious. I think he wins this fight dominantly. This is, Urel, or however you say his name, is the type of body frame that Hockett has been dominating so far on the regional scene. That bigger, no offense, a little flabbier heavyweight. He's just dominating these dudes. And I think he's going to continue that pattern here. I really could see Hockett being a guy that's going to be he's going to be challenging ranked opposition within the next year. That's what I feel like for sure. And, he's a young guy too. So I can see him being a contender one day, relatively soon. The third fight we're going to get into is Lewis Lee Scott versus Kashik Sekumar. Right. Scott is sitting at a minus 425 favorite, and Sekumar is at a plus 330 underdog. Again, I'm going to put these names on the fucking screen because I'm not a broadcaster. I'm not announcing these names good. When you look at these guys' pro MMA record, you'll see that Scott has, obviously more pro MMA experience, but I think that's a little bit loaded. When you look at his first fight, he fought a dude. I lost my place. Stick with me, folks. He fought a dude who was 3-15-1 in his pro MMA bout, and his current record now is 3-17-1. So he's obviously not a hammer, and that's not uncommon. A lot of pro MMA guys, they make their debut against somebody who's a tomato can, and they kind of go out there and whip their ass and get their career started early, or on a good track like that. But when you look at his first 5 fights in general, that was his debut. He also fought a guy who, Tapology had flagged that his opponent had no reasonable path to victory. He didn't, it was deemed to be record padding, so it's been flagged by Tapology. So that's 2 of his 5 wins. A third win of that 5, he fought a guy named Lucas Tenorio. Lucas Tenorio has a 7-28-1 record, and Tenorio has been flagged by Tapology in general because he has displayed, here, let me just read this, displayed a lack of competitive effort in fights. That is not really getting experience, if you ask me, on the pro MMA scene. I know there's tomato cans out there that you can fight. Fight those guys, they'll at least try. But when I see him fight a guy like Tenorio, it really brings up the question of how tough are these dudes that he's fighting. I don't want to talk shit on Scott too much. I mean, like I said, a lot of guys come in and they kind of pad their records a little bit in the first 5 or so fights. He has really, really good kicks. He uses his kicks almost like Shara Bullet in the sense that he uses them to control range. He does a lot of teeps up the middle and push kicks. He also attacks the legs a lot, and he throws a lot of volume in his kicks. That is typically something that separates himself from his opponents in fights. I also like Scott's ability to make adjustments in fights. He fought a dude named Edgar Oliveira. In the first round, he was winning the striking battle, and he won the striking battle the first round. But towards the end of that first round, Oliveira started pressuring him, and he started getting in boxing range and finding success. He started round 2 doing exactly that, and Scott was basically like, nah, fuck this, we can't have that. So he transitioned to becoming a wrestler, and I really like to see that. He made an adjustment in the middle of the fight when he realized, all right, this might have been working already, but it's not working right now. So I got to do something else that starts to work. So he took Oliveira down. He was able to control him in the second round. Third round came out and did the same thing. If it's not broke, don't break it. So that's what he was doing, and he was able to get a clear decision win against a pretty tough opponent. Sekumar is a pretty poised fighter. He doesn't seem like he's really rattled ever in fights. He never looks flustered, never seems frustrated, and he picks his shots really well. He also utilizes his kicks to his advantage. I think as far as the kicking range, Scott's going to have an advantage here. One thing I notice about Sekumar is he's super fucking fast. This dude is lightning quick on his feet. I think he'll have a speed advantage in this fight. He's had a speed advantage in all of his fights pretty much, but he throws those kicks really well. He's also very long. He'll be the longer fighter. So it's really difficult for opponents to get in boxing range to try to do anything. Scott's, not known for his boxing skills particularly, but, if he's not able to get inside and land any boxing, he's going to become a little bit more one-dimensional on his feet, which will help Sekumar a little bit in this fight. Both these guys, like I said, they like to throw a lot of kicks, but Scott seems to throw more volume in kicks, and he seems to utilize them to his advantage a little better. Sekumar does a really good job of keeping himself safe on his feet. In all the fights that I've watched, nobody was able to really land cleanly on him, outside of maybe some leg kicks. But they're not able to get any offense going, and I think that's going to start to frustrate Scott. I like Scott's ability to get the fight to the ground if it's not particularly going his way on his feet. But the one thing you have to notice is Sekumar and his jiu-jitsu skills. He's a super long guy, and I think he uses his length on the bottom really well. He's also a student of Ryan Hall, which y'all know Ryan Hall, fucking boring as shit on MMA, but you got to give him respect for his jiu-jitsu skills. Mr. Butt Scooter himself, But, like I said, he's really good at jiu-jitsu. I think Sekumar uses his jiu-jitsu better in a fight, though, even than Ryan Hall. Ryan Hall wants to stick on the ground. He's content being on his back. Sekumar seems like he uses his jiu-jitsu for sweeps to get back to his feet. One thing you got to ask yourself with these Contender Series fights, especially in a card like this, is who's the underdog that's going to be barking. It's not often that you see in Contender Series that all the favorites win. It almost never happens. Almost every single card, there's a relatively big underdog that wins, that figures it out and wins. If this fight was happening on the regional scene, where winning is pretty much the only thing that matters, I would be going with Scott. I think he's got more tools to get this done. I think he has a better path to victory. But when you look at Dana White's rant at the end of episode 1, how fucking boring those guys are, he wants to see finishes. He wants to see guys take risks. And of these two guys, I think Scott's the one that's going to be willing to take more risks. That could play out to his favor, for sure, if he gets the win. But I really I really like Sekumar's composure in fights. He's super poised, and he's not going to rush anything, even if Dana White is in the corner screaming telling him to do something, So for that reason, I'm going with Sekumar to win this fight. I think he's got a good path to victory for decision, but I also think he's got some tricky jiu-jitsu, and the submission prop is live. Fourth fight we're getting into is Brandon Holmes versus Cam Ralston. Brandon Holmes is sitting at a minus 166 favorite, and Cam Ralston is a plus 140 underdog. This is basically the only pick'em of the card. I wasn't able to do a lot of film study on Holmes just because he doesn't have a lot of fights out there to break down and study. He's only 5-0, and not all of his fights are on YouTube or Fight Pass or whatever fuck. Plus, when like I said, first and second fights of a pro MMA career, probably not worth breaking down too much because typically those guys kind of suck. But the one thing I did notice is he's powerful. He's got big power in his hands. He doesn't throw a lot. I would like to see him throw more volume, but when he does throw, he's throwing with bad intentions. I didn't break down any fights where Holmes is working in any takedowns, but he'd be wise to try to mix in some takedowns this fight. We saw Ralston kind of get a little bit dominated with takedowns in his last Contender Series fight against, what's that big giant dude? Torres Finney. We saw Finney kind of dominate him in the most boring way possible with his takedowns. But it showed that he's not really good at defending takedowns. But one thing I did know about Ralston is he's good at getting back on his feet. He never stopped trying and working and being successful at getting back to his feet. Ralston comes from a Muay Thai background, and you can pretty much tell from his stance and the way he carries himself in fights. He doesn't do that light lead leg type shit, but with the way his guard is kind of like up and out a little bit like a Muay Thai fighter. And I don't think that really translates well to MMA, especially since we have the 4-ounce gloves, not whatever ounces they use in Muay Thai, which I'm not really sure. But I know they're a lot bigger than 4 ounces. Those big gloves make it easier for you to defend yourself with, not covering up your face as much. But when you're facing a big power puncher like Holmes, I think that high guard is really going to be a big thing and something that he'd want to start trying to do. Another thing I noticed about Ralston's striking is he starts to fade in his speed for sure in rounds 2 and 3. He's naturally not a super fast striker, but those punches are start really looking labored once we get to rounds 2 or 3. So that's definitely could be something that might work to his disadvantage in this fight. Another thing I noticed with Ralston striking, and it's kind of piggybacks off of the way he has his guard, is he lets fighters who are not that good in striking be able to touch him. We saw Torres Finney touch him. I saw a couple guys in the regional scene after that fight be able to touch him, especially later in the fight. And that's not good. That's not good when you're fighting a power puncher like Holmes. So, for my official prediction, I'm going with Brandon Holmes. I'm sticking with the favorite here. I think the KO prop is super live on this one. But stay tuned for the rest of the video to see what we do with our parlay. The last fight we're breaking down is Manuel Exposito versus Jose Delano. Exposito is at a plus 400 underdog, and that line seems to be changing as I'm talking. And Jose Delano is at a minus 535 favorite. Both guys have a similar approach to fights in regards to their pacing. They don't fight the same really at all, but they do pace themselves relatively similar. They both start really slow, and I think it would be advantageous for one guy to be the aggressor right off the bat. Maybe to fight a little more uncomfortable, take a little more risks. And obviously that fighter should be Exposito. He's the big underdog, so he's got a lot less to lose. When it comes to striking, I think both guys also kind of wait to find those openings and then explode into those. But I think Delano is a more tactical striker. I don't have a striking background, so it's really hard for me to kind of expand upon that. But it just seems like he picks his shots better, and he's willing to force shots a little bit and take a little bit extra of a risk. I don't see Exposito doing that. He's just going to explode in with big punches, and if he doesn't see those openings, he's not going to throw. When it comes to their strength of schedule on the regional scene, I definitely like Delano's strength of schedule. He's beaten some pretty tough dudes already on the regional scene, and he shows that he could beat guys a variety of ways. Exposito, I don't really particularly like his background as far as his strength of schedule. He fought also in that 8-man tournament that Jimenez fought in, that Jimenez won, but he ended up getting put out in the first round to a guy named Tommy Garcia. Garcia is not that great. He's not that impressive. He ended up getting to the finals in that tournament, but he lost his very next fight. But they gave him the win because it's a DQ win. Apparently the guy was hitting him in the back of the head. They weren't big shots, and it didn't seem like the guy got any warnings. So it was really interesting to me that they just stopped the fight, instantly gave Garcia the win, when we all saw that he was going to lose that fight. Then he loses the next fight, like we already talked about, against Jimenez. And then he loses his next fight on the regional scene. So technically, the last guy that that Garcia got, let me run that back. The last guy that Garcia beat was Exposito. Like, technically. Exposito is definitely going to be looking to wrestle. We've seen him in his wins in the regional scene. He likes to use his boxing, big overhand punches to straight into takedowns. That's his path to victory here. But I don't see that happening, to be honest with you. I think, what's his name? Delano is going to do a really good job at defending takedowns. We saw in his last fight against Abu Muslim Alakov. Go look it up. I'm not good with the pronunciations. But you could probably tell from the name, he's from Dagestan. So we all know those Dagestani approach, the Dagestani approach for fighters. They like to come in and spam takedowns, use a lot of wrestling, and dominate the grappling. That guy tried to implement that approach against Delano, but Delano was just sprawling and brawling. He wouldn't let him get even close to his legs. So if Abu Muslim Alakhanov, who I don't know much about, but I do know he was undefeated, if he can't get a takedown, I don't favor Exposito to get a takedown either. For my official prediction, I'm going with Delano. I think he can win any single way. He can win by knockout. He can win by submission. He can win by decision even. And I'm going with the decision win here. I think Exposito... let me run that back. I'm going with Delano by knockout. I think he's going to find a way to do damage. If you look at Exposito's head, he's got a big-ass head. So it doesn't really mean he's going to get knocked out, but his body's going to be open. And I think Jose Delano's going to realize that and look for body shots. So I'm going with a knockout by body shot. All right, well, we've done our breakdowns, and we're just going to jump right into the parlays. We're not doing any extra videos for that or any shit like that. I've given you my official predictions, but the one thing that we have to know is sometimes we deviate from the predictions just because we see value and another prop. So a couple of these are different than what we talked about already. But let me just get into it. First off, let me note that I'm filming this on Monday night, so we're, 24 hours from the fights happening, and I still don't have no fucking lines on DraftKings. That's fucking ridiculous. I got money lines and I got over-under props for the rounds, but I don't have any other lines, which is really annoying. So I can't give you official lines for these picks, and I really wish I could. Let's jump into it, though. Parlay number 1, I got Josh Hockett to win in round 1. Again, I don't have the line for that. That line could really stink, and if it does, maybe reconsider throwing that one in there. But we have Hockett to win in round 1. Second leg of this line, we have Jose Delano to win by knockout. Like I said, I think he's going to be able to sprawl and brawl and, find those body shots like we had just said and get the knockout. So we're going to go with Jose Delano by knockout. The third line on this one, we have Cam Ralston money line. He is an underdog, and he is a much longer fighter. So I got to just give him credit, give the credit to his fight camp. He's with those Australian dudes where Izzy's at. I'm not good with names. It's City Kickboxing. He's with City Kickboxing. They're a decent fight camp for sure. They've produced champions and shit. So sprinkling a little bit of something on the money line is a good bet for sure. Parlay number 2, you guys will probably think I'm just dog hunting on this one and looking for a decent parlay that hits, that pays. And you're not wrong about that. But it is an intelligent pick. And first leg of this one, I'm going with Kashik Sekumar, just money line. He's a big underdog in this fight, and I do think that he's got past a victory against Scott. Sekumar is a tough fighter, and him being underdog, the one thing I don't like is he's from India, and we've been pushing Indian fighters maybe too quickly because I know Dana White wants to tap in the India market. There's like 7 billion people from there. Nobody has been able to do it yet. But I think Sekumar could be the guy that actually gets on, the UFC through the Contender series. He's a tough fighter. As you can tell, this line or this parlay is all definitely going for, longer shots. So we're going to keep that going. I'm going with Tommy Kuezi by knockout. Like I said, he is 100% for sure, factually, the best striker that this dude has ever fought. I think, what's his name? I think Ramiro Jimenez is a tough dude. He really is. But, like I said, Tommy's got good striking. And I think there's a good path to victory for him to catch him clean early, especially in round 1, and get a KO. So we're going with that one, number 2. And then number 3 of this leg, we're going Brandon Holmes by KO. Obviously, if we're going Cam Ralston money line on one side, we're going Brandon Holmes knockout on the other side. It would fucking suck if Brandon Holmes goes in there and gets a submission somehow or a decision. That would fucking suck. Ruin both of our parlays. But I don't see that happening in the sense of, we have a lot of paths to victory on this fight to at least hit one of them. So third parlay, Brandon Holmes by KO. Alright guys, that's all I got for you. I'm a long-winded motherfucker today, I guess. This video is a little bit longer than I wanted it to be. But you get what you get. So I've done my research. I've done all the breakdowns. And then we have 2 official parlays. Make sure you get those in there tomorrow. If you're going to want to lock those in, those lines get released, I think, in the morning. So we don't have much time to lock those in. So if you want to run these parlays, run it. I see good paths to victory. And I'm out of here, guys.